Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to another episode of What's on the Playlist today. So, what that might be is Chuck Brodsky, Letters in the Dirt. Um, I don't think Chuck Brodsky is very well known. He is in the vein of Bob Dylan, John Prine, Arlo Guthrie, Woody Guthrie. Um, Basically, a guy who stands up on stage by himself, who doesn't sing very well and just tells stories. He's a folk musician, solo act, um, and he's a storyteller. He's apparently older than I am, and based on the image on the cover, this album was kind of old. It was put out in 1996, I think. He's been putting out albums since the mid 90s. He's put out at least a dozen albums. This is his second album. I do not have his first. I do have several of his albums, though. One of the common themes of his work is he talks a lot about baseball. Believe it or not, he writes folk songs about baseball. The very first song on this album is called The Ballad of Eddie Klepp. Now, however much a fan of baseball you might be, you probably don't know the name of Eddie Klepp. Eddie Klepp was a white baseball player back when they started to integrate the teams. However, Eddie Klepp played with the black teams. He was the only white player. A lot of people know the first black players playing the white teams. Eddie Klepp was as far as I know, the only white guy who played for the black teams, and he was treated very poorly. He couldn't ride the same buses. He couldn't eat the same restaurants. He had to travel alone and work. He was also given a lot of crap for playing with the black teams. So it's an interesting take on Americana's history of baseball to view things from that unusual perspective. And it's a good song. It's in my opinion, one of the better songs on the album. There's other songs on here that are Missing Each Other's Cues, which is basically a song about a couple who are having a hard time connecting. No More Mr. Nice Guy, obviously about a frustration of, a song about frustration. What's the other one I want to talk about? Talk to My Lawyer is a song about frivolous lawsuits. There's other good songs on here. She's Gone. Letters in the Dirt, I think, is another song about baseball, but I'm not sure if I'm remembering correctly. I think it's a song about a baseball player who used to write things in the dirt on the first baseline, in response to the crowds giving him a hard time. Don't quote me on that, though. I'm doing that from memory. However, the one song on here that I really want to talk about is the third song on the album, called Bill and Annie. Excuse me. Bill and Annie I heard during a podcast, Welcome to Night Vale. If you know Welcome to Night Vale, you know, but if you don't, in the podcast they have an intermission in the middle of the show, and the show's creators basically just throw a song in there. It's something that they happen to like, either something the show's writers or producers or on the staff that like, or something someone sends in. They eventually started taking like, not requests per se, but basically there's a little vignette in the middle where they play an intermission song, and it's whatever they happen to feel like. And I've actually gotten some good musical recommendations from them, and they played Bill and Annie. And I have a few of his albums, and of all of his works, Bill and Annie remains my favorite song of anything Chuck Brodsky has done. It is a song, and I've listened, and Chuck Brodsky's actually based this on somewhat of a real story. The real story is that he and his wife, Ann, were driving, and they stopped at a local farm stand, and he introduced himself. Hey, I'm Bill, this is my wife, Ann. And the guy was like, I'm Chuck, and this is Ann. And the guy's like, Annie, and he basically wrote a song. This is that guy's reaction. Like, obviously he knew someone named Annie in his past, and he had a fond recollection of her. And This song's a bit more melancholy. The theme of the song is Bill and Annie met on Bill's wedding day, and he fell in love with a woman who was not his wife. So it is definitely a melancholy song. He's like, what do I do? I'm just married to this woman whom I've loved, and now I found a woman who I love more. What am I going to, to give it away? Bill stays with his wife. He doesn't cheat on his wife with Annie. But, Annie and his wife were friends, so they saw each other frequently. It's a song of a missed opportunity. And I just really love the song. I really, really, really do. And like I said, it remains, of all the songs he's written, my favorite of his works. And he's written a lot of songs I do like. A couple of which I like Letters in the Dirt and The Ballad of Eddie Klepp and some of the other stuff, Missing Each Other's Cues. He reminds me more of, I mentioned John Prine and Bob Dylan and Arlen Woody Guthrie. To compare him, I think he reminds me more of John Prine in that some of his songs are rather silly and self-deprecating, but his other work tends to be more melancholy, and that is more reminiscent of John Prine than Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan's songs are deep poetry. They have deep meaning, which is fine. I'm not complaining about it, but it's a different style, which is why I compare him to John Prine. Is that his songs can be relatively deep, but they are more wistful about things that might have been or things that have gone past. So it's a good mix. You've got the up tempo goofy stuff, not taking himself too seriously, mixed in with his more serious pieces. And he couldn't, like those other folk singers I mentioned, couldn't sing his way over a paper bag. His guitar playing is decent. He's not gonna set the world on fire with his guitar playing. He's a competent guitar player, but his real strength is his writing and his storytelling. So if you like that type of music, I would highly recommend you check out Chuck Brodsky if you've never heard of him before. Definitely a good listen to if you're into that type of folk music. So, as always, thanks for watching. As always, my stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting.